Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the fuck you are in the world. This is Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I am your host, Piers Austin, and we are brought to you live by Multi-Continental Wrestling Alliance on Facebook and on YouTube. Now, before I get into my amazing guests that I'm going to be bringing in, I just want to take a quick second, a pause for the cause, a quick moment to thank some sponsors for helping us keep the lights on up in this bitch. And our first sponsor I'd like to thank is A-Rock Designs. Now, A-Rock Designs is that company that you see in every wrestling group on Facebook, every wrestling page on Facebook. They make custom cups, tumblers, hoodies, keychains, you name it, they make it. They made me this custom CM Punk tumbler because everybody knows I am a huge mark for CM Punk. If you want to get yours today, head over to A-Rock Design. Speak to my good friend, Ashley Rodriguez. She will hook you up. They have great prices and an amazing product. My next sponsor is Signal Studios. If you're an independent professional wrestler on the indies making a grind, you need some new entrance music, you can hit up Signal Studios and they can put it together for you. It's that simple. They can mix it, master it, and send it off to you anywhere around the world, wherever you are. If you're a musician here in Sydney and you need a place to rehearse or just record or anything like that, they have the most comfortable studio setup and you will not be disappointed. My third and final sponsor is WCW Championship Belts. I don't have an image for them yet, but I will have them hopefully by next show. Look, every wrestling fan loves championship belts. They either want to own one or they own one. As you can see, I've got 3 behind me. So if you want to get a great belt for a great price with special payment plans, you can get it. You can get your custom championship belt or a replica of your favorite championship belt. Also, guys, make sure to head over to prowrestlingtees.com/MWA World and pick up your MWA merchandise like this Shooting the Shit Uncensored shirt that I'm wearing today. But guys, enough of the plugs, enough of the promotions. Let's bring him in, the man that you're all here to see, Lodi. What's going on, brother?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on, man.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, man. It's I can remember back in WCW when I was watching, seeing you come out to the ring with Raven's Flock with those signs, and man, I've been a huge fan of yours. You're definitely a guy that I've been wanting to have on for a long time, and just have a talk and talk wrestling, talk about your career, and talk about your experiences. But man, I have to say, before we get going, you are in phenomenal shape for a dude at 50 years of age, man. Like I was saying it before, I feel a little intimidated. I just need to roll my sleeves down a little bit just so people can't see my arms, so you don't put me on show, bro. But man, you're looking great, dude.
Thank you, sir. Man, just turning 50, and it was my goal to try to keep my body in as best shape I possibly can. As long as I'm still wrestling, I got to look the part. That's just how I feel. And so a couple of my boys, Raven and especially Buff Bagwell, every time they see me now, they're like, Lodi, you got this backwards. You know, you look better now than you did when you were on TV. It's like, shouldn't you have switched that, bro? I mean, because we were making money and you were, and yeah, I might have got that a little backwards, but thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Nah, my pleasure, man. So, getting into your start into wrestling, one of the trainers that you trained with, who was a former ECW original and also been on this show before, CW Anderson.
Yes, sir.
How did you get hooked up with CW and start training underneath him? Because that was around the same time he was really starting his career. Just before I think he was in ECW, correct?
It was a few years before he got in ECW. It's kind of one of those crazy just stories where I graduated college here in the States at East Carolina University and opened a personal training studio. It was just my lifting, working out become my passion. And I had a guy stop one day who was taking sponsorship money for a local indie wrestling show and asked me, hey, man, would you be willing to give some money for our program, sponsor the show? And I said, of course. And he started looking around the gym and he said, man, I've got a trainer who trained me how to wrestle, and you're a pretty big guy. You're in shape. Have you ever thought about wrestling? I said, well, I actually lived with an independent wrestler in college. And because I was putting myself through school, I was working 7 nights a week and just didn't have time to take it up while I was in college. But he said, maybe you could work out a plan with him to help him get his body in better shape. He teach you to wrestle, kind of a trade-off. And, of course, that was C.W. Anderson. And so I drove up and met him. It was about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from where I lived at the time. And so 2 nights a week, an hour and 45 minutes there, hour and 45 minutes back after practice. And I guess the rest you could say was history. But I trained with CW first, and I was with him for a couple of months and started doing some indie shows. And from there, everything progressed forward. I ended up down in Atlanta at the power plant. W. Anderson was my first wrestling trainer. A lot. He there, me, and he is a phenomenal dude. One of my best friends in the business by far.
And were you a fan of wrestling before this opportunity came to fruition?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the coolest things about my life growing up in North Carolina, I was born in the 70s, so for the late 70s,
So we just seem to have,
the
so we
NWA
just,
wrestling before it became WCW. Yeah.
oh, okay.
So I grew up watching, Lex Luger and Nikita and, the Road Warriors and Arn Anderson and Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat. So I was blessed to have some really great wrestling in my backyard. Got to go once a month and watch those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got a few live comments coming in here as well. Wayne Baker, shout out to Animal Road Warrior who passed away. Absolutely. Rest in peace. But as you mentioned, getting into the training of wrestling, you were there a couple of months, did a little bit of indie work through CW, and then you eventually you went and signed to WCW pretty quickly for most guys, and you reported into the power plant.
It's truly a crazy story. Really, when I started wrestling training, had no real goal or desire to, at that time, make it on TV or be a WCW superstar, or any of those things. And once we started working and things started clicking, my tag team partner and I were working the main events in a lot of shows in the Carolinas. We came along about the same time, and we all worked with the Hardy Boys and Shane Helms and Shannon Moore and Joey Abs. Steve Carino was here. There's just a slew of us guys from North Carolina that all ended up working on TV. And so for all of us, we thought that was pretty cool. But about a year and a half after I started, I was doing a show one night, and a former USWA wrestler came in to our hotel room to talk to me and my tag team partner. He said, you guys can main event armories and high schools for the rest of your life. You're good enough to do that. Or you could go down to Atlanta and try out for the power plant and get on TV with WCW and make some real money. I've said my piece, and he walked out. That was it. And
Wow.
they had a tryout about 2 weeks later because they did a monthly. And he had phoned ahead and told Pez Watley, who was one of the trainers, about two kids that were coming down. And we went down. It's a 3-day tryout. And everybody's heard the stories of how brutal the power plant was physically, and the absolute hardest thing I've ever done in my life, including basic training in the military, just a real physical 3-day beating, thrashing, just wearing you out. And I had 27 guys in my class, and 3 of us made it. And they invited us, 2 out of the 3, to come back to the power plant and go to wrestling school there. And so a week later, I packed up all my stuff and had a friend run my gym for me. And back in North Carolina, I moved to Georgia, started the power plant. And once I got there, I was on TV in less than 6 months. So overall, it was exactly 2 years from the first month I took a bump that I started on the pay-per-view with WCW. And that's one of those things that's few and far between. Do people spend that little time wrestling before they get a break and an opportunity to make it on TV, especially back then. Guys worked years and years on the indies in Japan or whatever just to get an opportunity. And so I was very blessed, and a lot of things, right place, right time, and a lot of people who had faith in me and gave me a shot, and I'm thankful for all of that.
Yeah, and going into the power plant, the stories coming out of how the training was in the power plant. You're a guy who's in great, phenomenal shape now, and I'm assuming owning a gym back then, you would have been in great shape as well. How did you find, stepping into the power plant and just going through the conditioning drills? Was that something that your body was, oh yeah, okay, I can do this, or was like, holy shit, I thought I was in shape?
It was the latter, actually. It was, I thought I was in shape and I thought I could do it. And it was physically, the cardiovascular part of it was so intimidating because we did so much. And it didn't take me long to realize that no matter how good you look or how well you wrestle, if cardiovascularly you're not in shape to go, and you get blown up, get winded, get tired, the first thing your body starts thinking about is sucking in air and getting that next breath. You can't properly think about what's coming up, what do I have to do, where do I need to be. Your brain shuts all that stuff off. And so at my wrestling school, I teach kind of by the same theory. I'm like, if you guys aren't in shape, you're unsafe to be in my ring with somebody who is. So you've got to have your wind, and there's nothing like actual ring time to get you in that kind of cardiovascular shape. You can do some high intensity interval training and things that mimic what we do in the ring. But I think anybody who's been in this business a long time, if you ask them, the best way to get into ring shape is to get in the ring and wrestle.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, to be able to have that, that cardiovascular, energy and that training and that strength to be able to go in and do it. It's not, people think, I'm sure you would have seen it many times with guys coming to wrestling school. I can get in there and do this. How hard could it be? And then they get blown the fuck up. And then it's like, well, you just learned, sunshine.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So we had a tryout once a month. So once I made it in and I was training at the power plant, every single month for 3 days, you'd have a slew of 25 to 40 guys come in. And Sarge was the head trainer at the time, and he really put them through their paces cardiovascularly. And the majority of them quit the first day. Some would make it till the second day, but by lunch the second day, almost everybody was gone that was going to drop out. And you see these guys, and they have a different respect for the business. Obviously, once they, I've seen guys drop out in the first hour. You just can't do the squats. You can't do the push-ups. You can't do the sprints. You can't take the bumps. And so I'm not saying this was a dirty trick or was something that was underhanded by any means, but the power plant was there to train up-and-coming possible WCW wrestlers. It was a wrestling school. But just because you got into the power plant and you paid your money for training, there was no guarantee you'd ever work on TV. You still had to be good enough and have the body and have the right gimmick and the right character and the right timing. And so I saw a lot of guys come through who actually paid the money, made it, and worked really hard, but just never got that break, or, were relegated to doing enhancement jobs on Saturday night and that kind of thing. But showing up down there surrounded by guys who were already in and they knew the ins and outs of the ropes after, of the wrestling part of it, you quickly realize WCW already had, let's say, 175 wrestlers under contract. It wasn't like they were hurting for wrestlers. So in other words, if you got 27 to 40 people showing up for a tryout on Wednesday and they paid $250 each to try out, it made a lot of money for the power plant. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, exactly.
They were there.
Yeah, work the marks to get the money.
Exactly.
Yeah, and look, talking about WCW, when you came in, you debuted and you came in and joining the Flock. So, Raven, who was, pretty much an established guy, in the business, he'd been around to obviously multiple promotions and gone through different gimmicks over that time. And the Raven character, I think, in the late 90s really resonated with a lot of people. And I think, the Flock, which originated in ECW, then got brought into WCW. As a teenager myself during that time, I really felt that was a stable that I connected with, because I was a rock kid, man. I was like that grungy kid. I looked like you guys, man. I had the long hair and I was like, so as far as being brought into that stable, like how did that work? Like, what was the premise of putting the Flock together? Were you one of the main guys from the start of it, or how did it all come to be?
The Flock was obviously Raven's idea, and he has said this in multiple interviews, and so I'm parroting what he said, and we've had this discussion before. He really wanted to bring guys into the Flock at WCW that were relatively unknown, so he could change their gimmick, change their characters, and have a big influence on who came in and how they represented this Flock thing. And so one thing he doesn't get enough credit for is he took everybody you saw that came into the Flock. Raven basically gave them a character, mannerisms, how to carry themselves, who to be. And I don't know that everyone in the Flock totally bought into Raven's deal. And the reason I say that is it's been reported everywhere, and everybody knows Raven is super intelligent. He's a brilliant man, and he sees wrestling, which is complicated for some people to understand all the nuances and stuff and why we do this and why we do that. But for him, it's like tic-tac-toe. If he throws you 100 ideas, 99 of them are going to be home runs. He's just that tuned in to wrestling and had his pulse his thumb on the pulse of pop culture and, you know, kids in America. And I think the Flock had a much better and bigger potential to go further and be more. But there were certain things going on at WCW that they were only going to let one bad guy group run around too long. And
Yeah.
so that happened to be the NWO. And so we know how that ended up.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
But so
But it's
with Raven, the funniest story, how I met Raven, I was never, I'm obviously my mind and my thoughts process have changed on all this, but I was not an ECW fan. I just caught enough of it to realize it was, to me, just hardcore stuff, trying to Willy one up everything they'd ever done. And I never took the time when I was younger to understand those guys could wrestle. There were some really good wrestlers at ECW, and they told really good stories. And so while the over the top violence kind of turned me off to getting into it, I was out one night with a friend of mine at the power plant. We were in Atlanta, went out to a bar, and Raven came in, had just came down from Philly and left ECW to start at WCW. And the guy I was with was Johnny Attitude, who actually passed away last summer. And he was a big name at the power plant at the time. And I was there and did some Saturday night stuff. He said, "Hey, there's Raven. Let's go say hello to him." And I told Johnny, I said, "You know what? I don't know him. I'm not going to go over and bother him. I just don't think that's appropriate." And then Johnny's like, "I know him. I've met him." Like, you know, go ahead. So Johnny goes over and talks to Raven. I'm sitting alone. And Johnny comes back. He said, "Hey, man, Raven wants to meet you." Why does Raven want to meet me? I mean, I've never been on TV. I was just down at the power plant. And no, he said, I told him you were a personal trainer before, and he's looking to get in some of the best shape of his life. He wants to talk to you about hiring you as a personal trainer. And so I walked over, introduced myself, and he put me through my paces. He asked some really great questions and really dug in with how I trained and why I thought this worked, whatever, and hired me on the spot as his new personal trainer. So I left the bar that night, Raven's new personal trainer. And I probably trained him for maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks possibly. And because I was out of town every weekend doing indie shows outside of Georgia, he was typically home on the weekends because at the time WCW, they weren't doing a lot of house shows. They had the pay-per-views and Monday Night Nitro. And so I went from being his personal trainer to being his personal assistant. He actually paid me each week to run errands for him. And when he first asked me, I was like, you know, I'd sold my gym by this point. And I'm like, you know, I think he gave me $300 and $350 a week just to run errands for him. And I'm like, how bad can that be? And it's some extra money. And then he started getting upset because when he was home, I was always on the road wrestling, or when he was on the road wrestling, I was home. And we were sitting in a bar one night. He's like, "Man, I'm tired of you not being, you know, on the road with me or being around." And I'm like, "Well, you know, if I was on TV, that'd be great. It would work out." And he goes, "Hey, Stevie Richards had just gotten hurt and left." And he called Terry Taylor. We were sitting in a bar. And this is about 6, 7 months maybe after I went to the power plant, 5, 6, somewhere in there. And he called Terry, and I only heard Raven's side of it. And he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I put Brad Kane in the Flock? I really think he's good." And, "Oh, really?" Not because he said, "I'm going to bring him to Nitro on Monday if that's okay." And he goes, "No, okay. You're right. I forgot. Okay, thank you." Click. And so this is a Thursday night, and I'm expecting to go maybe to Nitro on Monday. Raven gets off the phone. He said, "Hey, we got a pay-per-view this weekend, Palace at Auburn Hills in Detroit. Terry wants you to start this weekend." So it's Thursday night. I've got dark hair, ponytail. No, I'd shave my ponytail. I'm shaved, dark, long, you know, short, dark hair. And Raven looks at me and he's like, "You know, we need to turn you into, you don't look like a star." He said, "I think you should be Billy Idol." And I'm like, got to look at him funny. Now imagine Thursday night at 12 o'clock, midnight, 1:30, I'm getting this news. And I got to catch a flight Saturday morning at like 8 or 9. And he wants me to go from dark hair and no gimmick, no character, no nothing, to go establish all this stuff in one day. So I ran to a place called Little 5 Points. They got the black leather pants and the boots and the chains and all the stuff. And, you know, that's how Lodi was really born. It was our off-screen relationship was very much like our on-screen relationship. You know, I really was his personal assistant and that kind of thing. So that's how it got started. And every time I get a chance to thank him personally, which I talk fairly regular, at least once a month through text or phone call. And that's the one man who did more for my wrestling career than anyone else ever. So I can never repay him for all the stuff he did. And by taking a chance on me, because he'd never even seen me work a live show before. You know, so he just had that much faith. And so for him and Terry Taylor had seen me work, and I'd done some enhancement jobs down at Disney at the Universal Studio tapings or whatever. But for those guys to take a chance and put me in that spot, again, I'm just thankful. And it happened so fast, so that was another thing that was just kind of unheard of.
How was it for you to go from being someone who was relatively unknown to then being on WCW Nitro every week and being on pay-per-view? Like, was that a little bit intimidating for you, or did you sort of go in and just blend straight into it? Like, how did that adapt for your lifestyle at the time?
I feel like my on-screen character absolutely fit into the flock and my the things Raven gave me to do and what Lodi meant to the flock. I felt like I did a really good job of following his direction on that, and he basically turned me into his old Johnny Polo gimmick, kind of the goofy guy who's there to be cannon fodder for the rest of the flock. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. He gave me some really good ideas on the character. And he gave Kidman all of his stuff, ideas on the character. And I feel like Raven took the time to develop all these characters. The guy necessarily into whatever it was Raven gave. So they halfway did it or wanted to be a tough guy, not necessarily a flunky. And I think the guys that listened to Raven, as far as Kidman and myself, I think got over with the fans better than some of the guys who just kind of blended into the flock and was just another, body.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I actually heard a rumor, well, I don't know if it's actually fact or not, that Lodi, and you mentioned he wanted you to be Billy Idol, and Idol spelled backwards is Lodi. Is that correct? Is that how the name was?
Oh, and it was the funny thing. I started in October, and Billy Idol has a copyright on his look. In other words, you couldn't dye your hair blonde and wear black leather pants and do the sneer and the chains and the glove and call yourself Idol.
Wow.
And, because if we infringe on, I think it's up to 68% of the character that's been copyrighted, you're in violation. And our lawyers at WCW looked at it and said, you're pretty much 100 on 100. You're pretty much Billy Idol. So we can't call you Idol. That's illegal. And so we just turned it around, and that's where Lodi came from. It's just Idol spelled backwards. And, here we are, strangely enough, 23 years later, and I'm still Lodi. So
exactly, man. But how did the signs come into play? Because I know around the same time, maybe a couple of years before that, ECW had Sign Guy Dudley.
Yeah.
And you started coming to the signs. Was that like an intentional sort of take from that? Or was that just coincidence?
No, it wasn't. Absolutely, there are no coincidences, right? And, Raven came from ECW, and the one thing with Raven is, he helped develop so many of the characters that Paul Lee used at ECW. He has, like I said, a great mind, and of course, the sign gimmick had been done by Sign Guy Dudley, and he jokingly told me later when we talked, he said, "Man, I first hated it when you did it because I felt like I was doing it first." Blah blah. I said, "But you got it on the big stage." He said, go with it. And so we made, we're friends and, got along great after that. And I think Raven had some influence on him doing that at ECW. So Raven kind of felt like, hey, I came up with this once before. We can steal it again. And, I jokingly tell everybody, obviously 23 years later, I'm still carrying signs. And so my line is, if you can't work, you better have a freaking gimmick, and that's a gimmick, I can't let that one go.
But as far as like the signs go, like who was it up to you to make the signs and be creative to come up with them, or was that sort of Raven's deal, or did they have someone who was in creative doing that?
Within a couple of months, maybe even shorter time than that, maybe 6 weeks, I pretty much came up with the overwhelming majority of the signs. The funny thing was Raven would give me some ideas in the beginning, and sometimes I'd have to kibosh them because they were just too risque to put on TV. But as the sign gimmick and the Lodi character started getting over a little more, a great thing happened with all the boys. They felt like, they wanted to help. And so a lot of guys would come by as I'm drawing my signs back, so write my signs backstage. Dean Malenko was the king of this. He'd be like, hey, Lodi, why don't you use... And he would give me something to put on the sign. I'm like, bro, that is brilliant. So I got some input from other people, but probably 75 to 80% of my signs were my ideas. And towards the end, when I was with Lenny, still doing the signs, the office came to me, and I can't remember if it was Terry Taylor at the time or somebody else. I tried to push the envelope on some things. Again, of political science major. I made fun of Bill Clinton when we were in D.C. Being a heel, it's always good to make fun of people in the town because it's only going to obviously get you heat. And it's easy to do.
Yeah.
But at some point, somebody higher up sent Terry Taylor or Kevin Sullivan one, said, hey, Lodi, you got a little overboard with the signs, what you're putting on TV. We have to approve them now before you take them out. So I was like, oh, that's just clipping my wings. But I learned in this business, you always just do it and play stupid and, take the blame later as opposed to asking for permission. And so within a day or two of them, bringing my signs into the office, is this good? Is this good? Is this good? Yeah, that'll work. Take that one out. Take that one out. You can use those. And this may be the rebel in me or just trying to push the envelope anyway. I would take 4 signs into the office and show them to them. I forgot who had to show. And they're like, okay, those 4 are good. Well, I'd leave 2 or 3 out. As soon as I walk to the office, I go right over and pick up the other ones and get them on TV. And it's like, somebody would ask later on, hey, did you get those signs approved? And I'm like, oh, yeah, they said it was good. We're good. And so, again, like I said, some of them were a little risque and some of them were just funny and some of them were silly inside stuff and some of them based on the wrestling business.
So one of your first matches that you had in WCW in ring, and I think it was actually in ring debut, was against Chris Benoit,
yes,
who obviously is a guy who has a very, very, checkered and colored history in the world of professional wrestling. What was it like getting in the ring with someone like Chris Benoit? Because he always had that intensity about him. He always had that. I don't know the word to say, but he was just always so aggressive, intense in the ring. Was working with him, a ease to work with, or was he someone that was very, very difficult to work with?
I don't know that I can name anyone that I worked with at WCW that I would label difficult to work with in the ring. But going back to Benoit, and you're absolutely right, it was December. We were in Buffalo, Midlands Arena, I think was the name of it. And I had my debut on Nitro, my first wrestling singles match against Chris Benoit. And a couple things led up to that. Raven was in a feud with Benoit. And so almost every night after his match, the flock would hit the ring. And one thing we did that the NWO didn't, and I think it's very apparent if you watched, we actually laid out spot by spot our run-ins. And what I mean by that is we tried to make it look entertaining as opposed to just have 20 guys come in and put the boots to somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, how exciting is that? That's just, it's been overdone. So as Raven would lay it out or Chris would lay it out, Lodi was always the first one in. I'm the cannon fodder and I'm taking the bump, right? So every night Chris would finish his match, get his hand raised. Here comes Lodi. Wham! Either a clothesline, a big chop, whatever it was. So I had worked with him in spots, but obviously not had a match with him. And the coolest story, one of my coolest wrestling stories ever, and I tell it every time I get a shot. We knew a week in advance I was going to wrestle Chris Benoit. Raven was sick. He was in the hospital. And so they came up with a storyline to keep it going. Chris Benoit had to beat every member of the flock to actually get back at Raven. So we were in Chattanooga, I think, the week before, and Terry Taylor grabbed me and said, hey, you got Benoit next Monday. That'll be your debut match, but, make it look good. So I had a week to kind of think about this. And my old partner at the time, who was still down at the power plant, he said, Benoit is going to call that match. I mean, there's no way it's all him, right?
Yeah.
And he said, but you've never wrestled before on TV live, and people already hate you. He said, what if, and he just goes forward and lays out basically a 10, 12-minute match. Everything, he thought, just in case Benoit said, what do you want to do? And we're both laughing. We're like, hey, it's never going to happen. I got this match in my head, and I get to TV on Monday, and the board's up at 2 o'clock. I knew I had to wrestle Benoit. I go to catering. I see Chris, and I got along great with Chris, and I loved him with all my heart. His intensity was unmatched in the ring, and he was one who made you believe everything he did was good. And so the show started live at 8 o'clock, but we get there at 2. We're sitting in catering. I see Chris. I walk over. Hey, Chris, you want to talk about our match? Hey, Lodi, it's 2 o'clock. I'll get with you later. Okay, cool. You're the guy. Come back at 4. See him again. Hey, Chris, Lodi, it's 4 o'clock. I'm like, okay, I'll give you some time. Get with you later. I think I asked him one more time at 6 or 6:30. Now we go live at 8. Chris, you want to talk about what we're going to do? Where he's like, Lodi, we're on the, we're at the end of the first hour. We've got plenty of time. I'll come find you. I'm like, okay, cool. So it's 7 o'clock. It's 7:15. It's 7:30. I don't know what we're doing. Now, if you remember, the flock used to come out a lot of nights down through the fans and sit in the front row when we first started. Yeah. Some nights we didn't make our entrance during the show. Some nights the show opened up and we were already at ringside. Raven would make those calls based on how he felt that day. And it's 7:30, and I say, Raven, are we going out before my match? Or are we going out early? What are we doing? He goes, let's go out now. We'll go out early and just get our seats. Well, when we go out to get our seats, I can't come back and talk to Chris. So it's, Raven says, let's go out at 7:45 before the show starts. And at 7:30, I can't find Chris anywhere. Now I'm starting to sweat it just because I want my first match to be great.
Yeah.
And I'm looking everywhere backstage. I'm dressed, got the whole 9 yards gimmick going on. And Chris Benoit walks through one of the backstage curtains. I'll never forget. He always wore this long trench coat when it was cold and always had a cup of coffee in his hand. I said, Chris, hey, man, I hate to bug you. Can we please just get an idea of what we're going to do tonight? And he's like, Lodi, we don't go out till. I said, hey, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You know how we go sit out in the stands some nights early? He said, yeah. I said, that's what we're doing. We're going out right now. Can we talk about our match? And the most amazing thing about that night was he looks at me and says, Lodi, what do you want to do?
Wow. That's like the veteran offering it up to the new guy. Like that's very unheard of.
Kid who had never wrestled on TV live. And I looked at him, and after I caught my breath and realized what he had said, I said, how about if when I come out of the ring, I'm over the barricade into the ring, when I get up on the apron, come from behind and knock me off. These fans want to see me get beat up because they're chanting Lodi sucks in all the arenas. Chop me all around the ring, blah, blah, come back in, hit me with a deal. I'll cut you off, get my heat. And here's the kicker. I said, at that time he was using 3 finishes. He would do the superplex, the crossface, and he would also do the flying, the diving headbutt. So I'm wrapping up what we're going to do, and I'm like, Chris, this may be too much, but do you mind hitting me with all 3 of your finishes? Set me up for the superplex, hit the diving headbutt, hook me in for the crossface. He goes, great, kid, I'll see you out there. Turns around and walks off.
And that you didn't speak to him till the match after that?
Never again. I gave it to him one time. And he came out. We did that whole match. The only thing that got changed right before the spot where I'm supposed to cut Benoit off and get some heat on him, our referee leans in and says, hey, we're running late. We just went into the 9 o'clock hour. Raw starting. You guys got to go home. And Chris said, Lodi. He said, dude, I'm sorry. He set me up top for the superplex, and we went home from there. But in hindsight, I got my butt kicked for a good 5-7 minutes. Just put Benoit over huge. And that was what my character was. He wasn't supposed to be a tough guy who could beat people, much less Chris Benoit. And so it was a great start to my WCW career as Lodi, doing a match like only Lodi could do. Get beat with 3 finishes. Why not? So it's kind of asinine, but it was great. It was a great experience. And Raven got in touch with me immediately, goes, bro, I didn't know you could sell like that. That was awesome. That was great. And so to get compliments like that from him was awesome. And I'll never forget. And he and I just had this conversation this summer. I walked through the curtain when it's over. And Chris was still out in the ring. And Arn Anderson standing there. He's like, come here, kid. I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? Here it comes. He said, hey, he pulls me off to the side. And he goes, hey, I know you didn't get any offense in. That probably, it's okay. First of all, when I go cash my check every Friday, the lady at the bank never says, did you win or did you lose? She just said, nice to see you, sir. Thanks for the money. He said, I can put you over on a big name next week if I need to, and bam, you can be right back up or wherever. I'm like, Arn, timeout. I just wrestled Chris Benoit for my first match ever live on Nitro. Bro, I'm good. I'm not, there's nothing I would change. It was perfect for the character, perfect for the storyline. And so that's where that came about. And Chris was the absolute best by far I've ever been in the ring with. Technically the most sound and most believable. And strangely enough, as you said, his intensity and all this stuff, everything he did, excluding the chops, obviously, Pretty light. He didn't work stiff unless you had your back turned to him and he booted you and you didn't see it. He's going to make you sell the next one. But so you always had to keep your eyes on Chris because he could throw a boot or a kick or a knee or something. If you're not watching, you can't sell what you don't feel. And so, again, it was great. We did lots of run-ins after, and WCW liked the program. They even recycled it, and we had another run-in with Benoit before it was all said and done.
Man, but you know what? I have to say, like, the fact that Benoit came to you and said, "Hey, man, what do you want to do?" and you understood the situation, you understood the character, where I think a lot of green guys would have sat there and gone, "Well, how about I hit you with this and then I hit you with this?" You know what I mean? Like, you understood the position that you're in, that you were there to be the bump guy. You were there, the guy to, make Chris look good, put the shine on him, so then he goes into the next match and he looks 10 times stronger. And that's the thing that I take my hat off to you, man, to understand at that point in your career where you needed to be.
Yeah. Great influences. I tell my kids at my wrestling school now, I'm like, you put the guys that I've worked under and spent a lot of time with that taught me so much about the business. They're some of the biggest and best names when it comes to psychology ever. You can't touch on almost any front Raven's wrestling knowledge and his ability to get guys over. I spent a lot of time with DDP because he and Raven were close, and Raven had DDP had good ring psychology. And then when I left WCW, I'd worked with Dusty Rhodes at WCW, but when I left and WCW got bought out, Dusty Rhodes had a wrestling company in Marietta, Georgia. And I went down and went to work for him as his head booker and wrestling on his shows. And so every day, 5 days a week, I'm in Dream's office and we're just talking wrestling for 2 hours every morning before the school started. And so the knowledge he passed on, I'll never forget one time, he's like, "Kid, I can never pay you what you're worth, but the knowledge you're getting is like going to wrestling college." And he was right. He just taught me so much. And so for me not to take that knowledge and carry it on to the next generation and show them how they can do it without always having to do one spot higher or go one step further to where they're really risking their safety and maybe even their lives in a bad way from doing something that's just too high risk or something that's just not safe.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You mentioned the high risk and not safe stuff, and you see, there's so many injuries, especially guys, I think, from, your generation and, the guys that had to then struggle with addiction problems, and pain problems, because of stuff that they did, because of stuff that they've gone through in the wrestling business. Do you feel that the wrestling business now has evolved where guys are being a little bit more smarter about their spots?
I would love to say yes, but I don't think that's the case. Maybe, for instance, and the incident I'm referring to is somebody who I started with and I consider a friend, and I admire his work at the last AEW pay-per-view when Matt Hardy got hurt. That spot off the lift, and they overshot the table and he landed on his head. It hurt my heart to watch that spot because I know what that feels like to fall on concrete, and from the height he fell from, and it was just overly dangerous and not necessarily, it didn't really add anything and put Matt's well-being at high risk there. And Arn and I think Arn just talked about on his podcast that it's going to be up to the boys to dial it back some. The office is never going to tell them to. The agent's probably never going to push them to do it, especially if they're bigger name guys. And I think we can go back to a wrestling style that is much more wrestling based and draw it, like Arn said, pull it back a little and still tell a great story and entertain people without always having to do a bigger and bigger and bigger stunt than last time.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. A lot of guys that are in the wrestling business, it's almost like they're in this business because of the attention, because of what they can be and to be these stars. And when they do these grandiose spots and they do these things and they put themselves through that, it's whether they think they're going to make themselves and make history in doing it. And you look at Mick Foley's spot back in 1998 when he went off the cage and then went through the cage. Essentially, that made his career. Like, that's one of the things he's most famous for. And I think a lot of guys try and emulate that and try and get that big, that crowd reaction or that reaction from the boys. But I agree with you. I think that the guys definitely need to dial it back themselves. But with your career in WCW, and they went through the disbanding of the Flock, and you started a tag team with the West Hollywood Blondes. How did that come about? Because obviously everyone knows the famous Hollywood Blondes. I really like the name, the West Hollywood Blondes, and to be honest, I really enjoyed the character of it as well, and the fact that at the time that you guys were really pushing that, really pushing the envelope as far as like the homosexual type innuendo, very much like Kwee did, and I spoke with Kwee about that, and to me, I thought it was great. I thought it was brilliant, and it was something different and original that you guys were able to do. Like, wrestling has seen the tough guys, but let's see the tough guys that like wearing pink. You know what I mean? Like,
with pigtails,
how did that come up?
And bows on the belt. We jazzed the old belt up.
Yeah.
Lenny was under contract to WCW, and he was doing the Saturday Night Enhancement talent, not really being pushed on Nitro or Thunder or any of that stuff. But came to me one day, and said, this was after the Flock, and I was on my own doing some singles matches, and Terry Taylor had kind of tweaked my gimmick a little bit to where in my shorts every night I would carry a foreign object, and I'd put it into my glove and, hit somebody with it, had a loaded glove. That was kind of my gimmick for a little while. But that's about the most they had for me. And Lenny came to me one day and said, hey, can I talk to him? He's like, what are they doing with you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, not a lot. And he goes, what if we formed a tag team? Like, what? And I'll never forget, I looked him in the eye and said, what are they going to call us? Lenny and Lodi the losers? I mean, we'll just be double bad together, right? And he's like, no, I got an idea. And he said, remember the ambiguously gay duo of Saturday Night Live? We could kind of tweak that around and do something along that. And I said, Lenny, at the time, I was closer to Kevin Nash, and he was doing the booking. And Lenny was really pushing this on me, and I didn't think he was serious. I said, Lenny, listen, if you'll put this all down on paper and explain it out, I'll take it to Kevin. And so we have TV together 2 weeks later, and I knew it was coming up, and I was sure he was not going to take the time to do this. And first thing I get to TV on that Tuesday to do the Saturday night show taping, Lenny walks up to me with like this 3-page thing. He's like, here, bro, I got it done. I'm like, what is this? He goes, our angle about being, the West Hollywood Blondes. And I'm like, Lenny. He said, bro, you promised. Take it to Nash. So I go down. Nash is sitting in the office, knock on the door. What do you want? Oh, Lodi, how are you? I said, Nash, got an idea to pass by you. Will you take a look at this? He said, sure, what you got, kid? I handed it to him, and I didn't read over it first. The first line of the gimmick, Kevin reads aloud, and he looks at me, and he's looking at the paper. He goes, this is not a gay gimmick. Bro, what do you – he throws it. That stuff. And I'm like, see, Lenny? And I whack Lenny. I'm like, I told you, man, get out of here. It was just – it would have been a good TV promo, right?
100%.
Yeah, I was living in California at the time, and we left and taping, and I was meeting with my manager out in L.A., having lunch, and I got a call from a good buddy of mine named Ross Foreman, who works at Impact and at the time was with WCW and promotions and the magazine. He said, Lodi, don't say anything to anybody, but you're going to get a call in about 5 minutes. I think they're going to do something with you and Lenny. And he hung up. I kind of brushed the whole thing off. And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, my phone rings. It's Kevin Nash. And he said, I think it was a Thursday. He said, hey, kid, you think you can be at Nitro on Monday? And I'm like, yeah, of course. What you got in mind? He goes, hey, remember that thing you brought to us about you and Lenny? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I think we're going to do it.
That's awesome.
That's how it started. And I cannot ever do an interview and not talk about this, but Lenny and I didn't really know each other. And I just, hey, Lenny, hey, Lodi.
Yeah.
Our in-ring chemistry and the way we work together, people will tell you, oh, I call it in the ring, or the old timers called it in the ring. And I'm not saying Lenny and I didn't put some spots together and do some same things at night, every night. But so much of the stuff we did that got over huge or got the best reaction was spontaneous stuff that just hit us in the ring. We really thought alike. We rode together. We stayed in the same hotels together. We worked out in the same gyms together. While we were on the road, we were like brothers. And that was the whole deal with the storyline at the end. We were going to come out to be brothers anyway. It just got sped up when AOL Time Warner got mad, was ready to kick us off TV for pushing the envelope too far. But that's where it came from. It was Lenny's idea, and I turned it in, and 2 or 3 months later, they said, all right, let's give this a try.
But that's the thing you mentioned, like they actually kicked you off TV because I think GLAD, which is the gay, lesbian, anti something,
Gay and Lesbians Against Defamation, and their watchdog, their media guy, had put forth 5 reasons why we need to be kicked off TV. And this is the thing that hurt my feelings, and I think anybody would have in the same situation. He made a list of 5 things that we were doing that he wanted us kicked off TV for or removed. And all 5 of the things he listed were incorrect. None of them were true. But AOL Time Warner had bought WCW by then, and to have a special interest group breathing down your neck as opposed to trying to look and see if there was anything to it, they just caved and said, all right, you got TV.
Didn't Bischoff get sacked for that as well, for temporarily, or he got suspended?
I've heard different things. He only came to us one time and told us to tone it down once. And he had nothing to do with it. And Dusty Rhodes did a lot of our promos in the back. And Eric, we were not high enough on the card for Eric to give us a lot of space or give us a lot of time. And so there was just, like I said, one day he pulled us to the side and said, hey, can you guys, tone it down a little bit so we don't get in trouble. But I've heard other people say, he's mentioned at times that might have been one of the reasons he got let go. But the cool thing about that time in our life is with us having access to the quarter-hour ratings, the television ratings, Lenny and I were consistently doing 4.5, 4.6, up to 4.8 for our quarter hour, where Hogan and Bischoff at the same night was doing 1.2 and 1.3. They had to change the channel heat. Like, they're all like, oh, it's Bischoff again, click. But people were actually watching Lenny and Lodi. And so back to the 5 things real quick. And one of them was in every arena, Lodi was announced as Lenny's gay homosexual partner. We never wanted, how laughable is that? This is WCW.
That's hilarious.
We weren't using that type of verb. No one ever used the word gay or homosexual in an arena or on TV.
No, especially then.
Right. And one of their big complaints was we would have been fine if you put this character or this gimmick on somebody who was already established and everybody knew or had been around for a while. Well, I'd already been on TV with a flock for 2 years, and Lenny had been around longer than I had. We were established characters in the wrestling world, just they might not have heard our name like a household name. They said we never won a match, ever. And Lenny had the cruiserweight belt. So how did we get that and hold it if we never won a match? Truly, everything they laid out was absolutely so backwards. It wasn't even the truth. But nobody at the company wanted to hear it or fight it. And so we got sent home for, 8 or 9 months.
That's wild though. Like Like the characters were entertaining. Watching it, it definitely didn't look like it was an insult or a defamation to gay or homosexual people. The fact that the funny thing that you guys could have played on is well, both these guys could be obviously you guys are both straight, but saying that you guys are both gay, this is how these guys really are. Try and work you try and work them. That would be mine.
Well, the funny thing is, if you missed one of the last vignettes before we got taken off TV, we played on a common theme through the whole thing where Lenny and I would be backstage, and Lenny kept referencing, he's like, bro, I think they know about us. And I'm like, bro, it's okay. It's not a big deal. He's like, no, I think they know. We're in trouble. I'm like, Lenny, it's not like we're the only 2 here. There's a bunch of them, And so the whole story was,
that
we were brothers. But we're talking, so we had brother tag teams. You got Harlem Heat. You got the Armstrongs. And the final deal was we were in the shower one night, had boxers on, but getting ready to film. Lenny and I talking. Lenny's dressing up. We had a meeting with the office coming up. And at the end of the vignette, of course, Lenny's going to drop the soap and bend over. And I'm going to look at the camera so we're getting ready to film. That was going to be the vignette, right? And everybody's giggling. Everybody's laughing. I'll never forget Arn Anderson come rushing in the locker room. He goes, boys, get out of the shower. You got to be brothers right now. We're in trouble.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
We're like, what? He goes, get out of the shower, get your clothes on. We can't do this. And so we do a spot with JJ in the office, and JJ's like, Lenny, Lodi, we know what's going on here. And I'm just sitting there, and Lenny's like, oh, he said, we know all about you too. And I was like, see, I told you, Lodi. And he just keeps going on and on, right? You guys have been keeping a big secret from us, and we need you to sign your new contracts. But you can't sign your new contracts to Lenny and Lodi. You got to use your last name, and look, we know you're brothers.
Oh my God, that is so well put together. But the funny thing is, around the time that this was happening was the Attitude Era, where they had women going through tape. They had like elderly women going through tables on the other show. They had women pretty much like stripping off naked. But this was the drawing point. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think it's because it probably made people feel uncomfortable, and when people feel uncomfortable, it's like, oh, we can't have this, we can't have it, no, cut it, and that's the thing. And you guys did your job because that's what it was meant to be. It was meant to be that, and I think you guys did it really well.
The frustrating thing for us too was the month after we got kicked off, it had been settled up. They had not announced who was going to be Harlem Heat, who had the belts at the time, who their opponents were going to be. And the deal was Nash wanted to be us, and we were taking the belts. And so we just got taken off TV before that ever happened. So that got kiboshed. And so that was frustrating, to have something that we felt so strongly about and enjoyed. Probably one of the most fun times ever in the wrestling business for me, because the fans reacted to everything we did. And I've got a ton of stories, man. We could talk all night about the West Hollywood Blondes. And when it first started to get over, you walk into catering, and us wrestlers are all trying to be macho alpha males, and we'd walk in and there's 100 guys eating, and it would start with one, and I mean then they're like, oh, look at those two, because we did everything together, right? And the best part was, after everybody had stood up and berated us or just made fun of us, we sit down and start to eat, and Steven Regal would walk over and he's like, hey boys, why don't you try this tonight? And he would give us a spot. And Kurt Hennig would come over and go, hey guys, can I talk to you for a second? I got an idea for you. And so truly, like with the signs, the guys were great at giving us stuff to get over. And one of my favorite things we ever did on TV that I'll never forget, I loved working with Brad Armstrong. He was so good. And Brad at the time was a part of the No Limit Soldiers with the Big Swole, the big guy. We were wrestling them.
Yeah.
And one spot we did a lot, but had not done on TV yet, was where Brad would shoot me in the corner. I stick the turnbuckle. He'd shoot Lenny in the corner. Lenny sticks, me. And so we're back to back in the corner. And then Big Swole comes in with a double clothesline. He moves out of the way. Lenny falls out to all fours, and I fall down behind him with my hands on his hips, sitting up and rocking back and forth. And that got a reaction every night. And Brad's like, I want you guys to do that spot. And then boom, once the pop wears off, I'll boot Lodi and we'll go to the next thing. So we were in Huntsville, Alabama, and we go to the spot. It works perfect. I fall down behind Lenny. I'm sitting up on my knees, and he's down on all fours. And kid you not, it was not just because of yesterday, it was a Road Warrior pop. I mean, the whole place just, the roof came off, and I'm like, before I can even think to myself, like, yeah, that really worked. All of a sudden, Brad Armstrong, boom. I mean, he catches me with a right in the side of the head. And I'm like, it was over. Why did you got back to the back? I'm like, you're supposed to let us sell that for a little while, sell your move. And it was, people were going crazy. And he said, Lodi, I looked at it and I saw what you two grown men were doing, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. We've got 10 million people sitting at home watching this right now. I can't leave them here. Wham!
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, fun stuff, man. And like I said, I have never yet been in the ring with a tag team partner that we just had so much chemistry and meshed and worked together so well. And we worked at it too. I mean, we weren't just doing everything willy-nilly. We trained together and tried to stay in shape and do the best we could for our gimmicks. And after we left WCW, obviously we made the tour overseas of Australia with World Wrestling All-Stars, and went to the UK, did a tour there with the World Wrestling All-Stars. And that gimmick's a lot of fun when you don't have any pressure on you and you can do what you want with it and kind of go with it as you see fit. So we reunited for a show last November, WrestleCade, big show in North Carolina every year, and we got to do that together. And they put us in the Battle Royal, and they were so proud of, Lenny had gotten in really good shape, and so you got a 30-man Battle Royal, and everybody from Shane Douglas to trying to think, all the names that were there, they all get generic music. The first 28 guys all go to the ring basically at the same time, and then they stopped everything, and Lenny and I were the last two to come out, and of course they hit our overseas theme song of "It's Raining Men," and so Lenny and I get to do. We get to sashay to the ring, and then to top it all off, not only do we get to come out last to get our own entrance, but Scott Norton and Jeff Farmer were there. And I was friends with both those guys from WCW. And one of the promoters guys walked over. He goes, "Hey, man, I got some kind of bad news. If you don't mind, is there a way we want to bring the NW out, halfway through the Battle Royal? Would you mind? Norton's got a bad hip right now. He really can't move well. He can't get in the ring. Would you guys be willing to let them come up and drag you under the bottom rope and, you guys just fight to the back?" And I'm like, "Why, yes, we will." I mean, it's like, you hate doing a Battle Royal because you get hurt or somebody does something stupid. But not only do we get to have our own entrance, we get to fight the NWO to the back. So, yeah, man, it was a win-win. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely, man. And you have that moment of being able to sort of, not getting thrown over the top and getting dragged out. And
got the big bump out, right? How safe is that? They just walked up behind us and, swept the leg and out we go. So good stuff.
Absolutely, man. So now it is time for that show. I have warned Lodi, or not warned, but I have told Lodi about this part of the show, which is guess the Australian slang or phrase. So how this is going to work is I'm going to give you an Australian slang word or Australian phrase. I'll put it all in a sentence, and you just tell me what it means, okay? So you've been to Australia a couple of times, so you may have heard this before. So if not, this is preparing for next time you come to Australia.
Gotcha.
All right, so first one. Oh, mate, fair suck of the sauce bottle. Fair suck of the sauce bottle.
Drinking alcohol?
No, it means like, oh, come on, mate. Like, seriously? Like, come on, like, fair go. Like, give it a crack. But close.
Yeah.
She'll be right, mate.
The girl will be okay?
No, so she'll be right, mate, pretty much means like, yeah, no worries. She'll be right.
Oh, okay.
Good stuff. She'll be right, mate.
I'm terrible.
All right, next one. That's okay. That's okay. Sorry?
I said my Australian girlfriend would fire me right now if she could hear this.
Oh, you've got an Australian girlfriend. Perfect.
It's an inside joke. I met a girl over there when we came with the World Wrestling All-Stars. She had been hired to come out one night and do the segment with the King, back when he's doing like the puppy segment, And
Yeah.
I got night, and backstage she started talking to me, and I had so much fun with getting to know her and hanging out with her. I actually put her on the rest of the tour and paid to take her to all the towns and hung out with her, and we still stay in touch this day. So that's kind of a cool sidebar there.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so we'll get on to the next one. Go on, mate. Have a Captain Cook. Have a Captain Cook.
Does that have a drink?
No, it means to have a look, check it out, a brief inspection.
Gotcha.
So it's also an honor to the first Brit who basically discovered Australia, who was Captain Cook. So
there you go.
Hey, Lodi, what's the John Dory?
Did you say John Dory?
Yeah, what's the John Dory?
I don't know. I've heard that phrase before. That's the bad thing.
So a John Dory is a fish found in Sydney Harbour, but it also means like, hey, what's the goss? What's going on?
Gotcha.
All right, so I'll go another one. Hey, me Uncle Reggie is a few stubby short of a six-pack.
Your uncle's not quite drunk?
All right. No, it means he's mentally is a bit lost it. He's a bit off his plot.
Gotcha.
All right. Oh shit, Dad's outside and he's wearing his fucking budgie smuggler again. Budgie smuggler.
Cargo pants?
Speedo. Yeah, they call it a budgie smuggler, Lodi, because like once you get out of the water, mate, it looks like you're smuggling. Well, yeah, a budgie.
Gotcha.
All right, so here's another one. Hey, it's better than a kick up the ass.
No matter how bad it is, it's not as bad as getting kicked.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's not as bad as getting kicked up the ass.
Finally, yeah.
All right. Oh, that's me, mate. He's a banana bender.
It's your friend. I got nothing. What's a banana bender?
That's someone we call from Queensland because obviously Queensland's Queensland's a place where they grow a lot of bananas and stuff. So we call them banana benders. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, getting there. All right. So we'll go a couple more. So I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire.
You don't like somebody at all.
Exactly. All right. Here's another one. Hey, Lodi, check out that Sheila.
Hot chick.
Yep. No worries. All right. So this is going to be a two-parter.
Oh, boy.
All right. So you know what Sheila is, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Lodi, I picked up a Sheila. Have you got a franger for my old fella?
A condom?
A condom for my cock, yeah. All right. So we'll go one more. Oh, mate, I'm a bit short. You reckon you can spot me a couple of pineapples and some lobsters?
Are you asking for a loan?
Yeah, so a pineapple is what we call a $50 note because it looks yellowy and a lobster is red. So, all right, we'll go a couple more. You're starting to get up there now, so I think you're firing up. So let's bring another one. All right, on your bike.
Get on your bike?
You on your bike, mate?
Are you on your bike? I don't know.
Are you on your bike? Are you about to leave?
Got it.
All right, so we'll go one more. Hey, can you go down to the bottle-o for me and pick up a slab?
I don't know. Go to the deli, bring some food.
Go to the bottle shop and get me a carton of piss.
There you go.
But look, that's been the Aussie slang game. Lodi, you haven't done too badly, mate. I think I've got to train you up, my friend. So next time you come to Australia, you can have all the lingo down and we can hit up a pub and you know what the fuck people are saying.
That would be great.
Absolutely. Lodi, where can everyone find you, man?
Best place to find me on Twitter, Lodi1Brad. Facebook, it's under Brad Lodi Kane. Our wrestling school is at yourflexappeal.com. I'm pretty easy to find on all social media, Instagram. It's all the same. LODI, the number one Brad is the best way to find me on everything.
There you go, guys. Firstly, Lodi, just thank you so much for coming on the show and spending some time. It's been absolutely great. I'd love to get you on for a part 2 because I feel like we just scratched the surface. Guys, thank you very much for watching. You can find us at Multi-Continental Wrestling Alliance on Facebook and on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like, hit the thumbs up, share, comment, all of that good stuff. And guys, we'll catch you next time. Thanks again for tuning in.